I'm Julie Legg, author of The Missing Piece and diagnosed with ADHD at 52. Welcome to ADH Difference. In this episode, I chat with Angela Raspas, Sydney-based business coach and mentor, fellow author, and also a fellow late diagnosed ADHDer. We talk about her move from corporate to self-employment, some of the strengths and challenges that an ADHD business owner faces, and also how her personal experience has impacted the way she coaches and mentors. It's wonderful to see you again, Angela. Thank you very much for making yourself available.
Could not be kept away from continuing the conversation we started when I was visiting. Delighted to be here.
I know, it was great. And for our listeners, it was wonderful to meet you in person a couple of weeks ago now. So Angela, you're Sydney-based. You're a business coach and mentor. You're an author. And you've also been late diagnosed with ADHD. We could almost split your story into two, the undiagnosed and post-diagnosis. So you've got a great story to tell, and you've got a very rich and full, busy working life. I'm wondering if let's just let you roll and
that could be dangerous.
and to share your story. How did you get into being a coach, let alone writing a book, let alone your learnings now post-diagnosis?
Oh my goodness, it is such a before and after thing. I am still obviously the same person, but that whole concept of a new pair of glasses to see the world with that ADHD lens, to see myself, my behaviors, all of the things I have and haven't done in life through that ADHD lens just gives you a whole different perspective on so many things. I mean, just to give you the best classic example of now I look back and go, aha. When I was in New Zealand, I was working for way back when in the late 80s, the Auckland Sun newspaper, if anyone remembers that one being around. I'd been there, I dropped out of uni because I wasn't doing very well, even though I did brilliantly at school. Once I got to uni, the wheels fell off the bus because there was no structure and I was living with my boyfriend and best friend, having fun. So I took that internalized that I was actually dumb and stupid, etc. Because, surely I should have been able to do well at uni. I was working at the Sun to get some money for to try again the next year. And one of my colleagues said, "Do you want to go to Sydney?" And I went, "Why?" And she said, "Well, why not?" And I went, "Checks out. How long for?" "I don't know. Let's see." And I went, "Okay." And 3 weeks later, I was in Sydney with a suitcase and I think about $600. And that was it. Things just happened from there. And looking back through the lens, the impulsivity, the lack of thinking about anything, the follow through was all evident there. And that just makes me laugh now because at the time I didn't understand that. Plus there was another piece, there was addiction going on, which I now know is also a part of undiagnosed, untreated ADHD. So I have, I guess, more self-compassion for a lot of the things that I did, understanding what was driving them or not driving them at the time. So life continued over here. I was in corporate land for a while. I got married. And then once I went to go back to work in corporate land, when you've got 2 kids by that stage, plus bonus boys, because I always had stepchildren, corporate world 25 years ago was not that conducive to the flexibility needed. I also look back at corporate land and now understand why I would fight to stay awake in meetings. Long boardroom meetings, and I literally would have to slap myself and pinch myself because there was just not enough stimulation. But again, I just thought that I lacked focus and all of these things back then. So that's why I went down the self-employment route. I needed the flexibility. I wanted the freedom. I chafed against the restraints, and now I sort of know why. So that started back in 2003 and went forward from there. I could keep going, but I shall hand back to you for a moment.
No. I was thinking a few things. I think with ADHD undiagnosed, I talk about sink or swim a lot. And, I think as it turns out, we're really good at dog paddling, or at least staying afloat, or if not, learning to swim really well. And we don't necessarily understand why, but we do. And it's part of our survival process. trying to further ourselves or get us through, or maybe subconsciously getting those dopamine hits that we didn't know we needed.
Yeah.
So you got yourself into self-employment, and was this business coaching a natural step for you after your corporate life?
Well, it didn't actually start there. Where it was is that I was in marketing, events, sales, trade marketing, that sort of thing. And what I noticed was that I had another little business on the side, of course I did, called Best Wishes, where I'd read about in a magazine in America, a parenting magazine, this woman who'd started this service where she put together welcome packs for real estate agents to give to new people moving into the area. I thought, that's a good idea. So off I went and raced around with, baby in the little cart beside me to all the real estate agents and all the local businesses and put together these packs. I charged the local businesses to appear in the pack. I charged the real estate agents for the packs. I color coordinated them in their corporate colors. And then people in the pack started saying to me, this is really working for me. I love this. Could you help me with my marketing? And I went, I've been asked now about half a dozen different people. I think there's something in this. And hence, Ideas into Action, my little marketing consultancy, was born. And it was one of those an idea that had its time, like it was just the right place, the right time. I had a lot of marketing nous, and I'd studied also at TAFE at night because I was determined to get some sort of qualification after dropping out of uni. And it grew. And I ended up getting a casual staff member to help with this new fandangled thing called social media, and it grew, and I ended up with 3 part-timers or casual employees who used to work in our spare room. We'd push away the Bakugan and the Barbies and work there. And then it grew, and I went to serviced offices and had like full-time staff, and then it grew. So I bought an office in Chatswood and had there was 5 of us, and it was just going along swimmingly. But there is something that I've learned along the way, which is just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. And even though I had grown a business that was using my skills, I hadn't grown a bit. I never paused and gone, is this what I actually want? It was just, well, of course you want to grow, don't you? And you want to get bigger and la, la, la. And I bought into that dynamic, but it didn't suit me because the bigger the business got, the more distance there was between me and the clients. And it's that one-on-one, the connection, the brainstorming, the connecting the dots, the spotting the opportunities, which I loved. And now I was more about paying the freaking bills and keeping the staff on track. And it was just, it was just killing me. So that was back in about 2011. So I'd been running the business for about 8 or 9 years. And my husband, I called it Your Next Chapter. My husband was undergoing his next chapter. He'd left corporate land and was consulting, and he was learning to sail. And he was way a fair bit doing that. But I picked him up one evening from the airport. He'd just done a sail to Lord Howe Island, and he was telling me about being out on the water and the freedom and the moon on the waves and la, 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 la. And then he turned around to me and said, "How was your week?" And I just burst into tears because I don't think I could do this anymore because the contrast and the resentment was so strong. And he looked at me and said, "Then don't." And it was like, oh, actually, maybe I don't have to do it the way that everyone else says it should be done, that narrative that I'd sort of accepted. But it still took me a long time to let go and move from delivery of services like that through a team to just doing coaching and mentoring myself, because that disconnect between what you can do and what actually helps you thrive can often be very, very different.
It's amazing. And so with your business coaching, which you still do, you wrote a book, which I think is so fascinating because it is Your Next Chapter, Ditch Your Doubt, Own Your Worth, and Build the Business You Really Want, which sounds amazing. But you did this undiagnosed with ADHD.
I did. And it's it's interesting looking back and seeing. I think what happens when you're diagnosed, and I think so many of us do this, we can look back then and we can see the things, the strategies, the tactics, the masking, the workarounds, the things that we needed to get in place to facilitate our particular style, but you didn't recognize them at the time. There's just the things that you did. And
Yes.
looking back now and reading my own book and going, that's why. That's why. That makes sense. So again, it's that lens that makes things different.
Absolutely. But from an ADHD, I thought the book sounded great because self-doubt is huge amongst us, and particularly with a lifetime of being undiagnosed and these incidents and accidents along the way. There's a lot of self-doubt creeps in, whether it's imposter syndrome in the corporate or a work environment, and doubting whether you've turned the oven off, to doubting whether someone misread your email the wrong way or took it the wrong way, and overthinking. There's a lot of things to self-doubt about. So
so much.
Yeah, so I can see how that was a very important topic to write about.
It was just utterly essential. And just on that point, all the women that I've worked with over the years, I've worked with a lot of men, but I specialize in working with women. And self-doubt was huge anyway. I did a couple of 2-day events over here, and I had people, this is going back a few years, I had people fill out like a survey, what's holding you back from building the business you want? Oh, I don't think I can. I don't think I'm up to this. I'm not as good as that. Like self-doubt, 98% of people were basically saying it's me. It's me that's holding me back. And I thought, well, that was rampant in women. Then when I started talking to ADHD business owners, oh my goodness, it was even higher. And I could hear myself in their stories. Stories are so important. I'm a huge believer in, not literally, getting naked in public, being honest about what's going on, because when you hear that, oh, me too, that not aloneness, that identification, it lifts that veil of shame, which sits on us a lot, I believe. And it gives us that, I call it skylight thinking. It opens a skylight in your head and in your heart. And you think, wow, they've opened a door, I can step through it now, because you have a little bit more understanding of yourself. So yeah, self-doubt, rampant, but I didn't know about RSD. I didn't know about emotional dysregulation. I didn't know about all of that stuff. I just felt it and recognized it in other people as well, which is why helping people believe more in themselves has to sit right alongside business strategy. Because we could develop a brilliant strategy, but if you don't believe in the value that you create and gift to the world, it'll just fizzle and you won't move. That's what I believe.
Oh, yeah, I agree. So how did you come about? What's your story with regards to getting an ADHD diagnosis? Because the late diagnosis doesn't surprise me. It happened to me. It's happened to thousands of others.
Yeah.
But what's your story, if you're okay to share that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty garden variety. My daughter, I'd been looking for solutions to her anxiety and tipping into depression for years. No one suggested she had ADHD. She was a perfectionist. She did really well at school. All the signs were there now, but again, she's one of those young women who slipped through the gaps because she didn't exhibit a lot of the behaviours that they were looking for at the time. But finally, at the ripe old age of 19, it was suggested perhaps that was what was under the surface. And when she was diagnosed, I started reading the material and going, oh, well, I see possibly. And I said to her, I'm thinking, Charlie, that this might be me. To which she went, oh, duh. Why do you think it took so long for me to get diagnosed? Because you thought everything I was doing was normal. So we've got through that, but she was right. And so I pursued a diagnosis based on that. And also a good friend of mine who I do these long walks around Narrabeen Lake here on the northern beaches in Sydney was diagnosed as well. And she would say things to me like, I think you're one of us. And when I'd be apparently exhibiting particular behaviours, the squirrel behaviours when we're talking and walking and zapping all around subjects, etc. And I would keep resisting that and saying things like, oh, you just think everybody is now that you're diagnosed. But once Charlotte was, and I started reading the material, I couldn't ignore what was right in front of me. So my diagnosis took a little bit longer because I mentioned before that I have addiction in my background. I've been sober now for 18 years next week, so that's fantastic. But I had to go through some extra hoops so that the psychiatrist could feel confident that it wasn't that I, sort of unwired my brain in some ways because of the addiction, because of the alcohol. But we got through that. I spoke to an addiction specialist. He checked all my brain out through talking, found my school reports finally in New Zealand, and they filled in all the gaps. And it was like, boom, yes, you're combined. Absolutely. And yeah, went from there. So that was 53. 53. I was like, yeah, wow. It took a long time.
May I say congratulations on working hard at beating your addiction. And it is so common for undiagnosed as a form of self-medication.
Absolutely.
When you don't have the tools and understanding to know that, it's unsafe and not healthy and all of those things. It's quite common. Yeah, quite common. All sorts of addictions are quite common. So
and
you
it's
did
really related to that self-belief piece you touched on before. To me, it was a low self-worth issue. And now spending some time with therapists and an ADHD coach, understanding what was driving some of those beliefs and that disconnection from self-worth. Brené Brown opened that door for me, and seeing that the escape, the numbing, was an attempt to, I feel like crap. The messages I'm getting around the world quite often are crap, and therefore I internalize that a lot. And yeah, that's what the addiction helped me at the time get through. And yeah, my beautiful, beautiful narrative psychologist, which means someone who helps you look at your stories, actually gave me a huge gift when she did say to me, do you realize what an achievement it is to get and stay sober when you're undiagnosed and unmedicated? And I was like, no, I didn't realize. And that really, I think, healed a little bit of those self-worth issues or lack of self-worth issues inside as well. That was really powerful.
Incredible. Tell me, as self-employed, as you are doing the many things you currently are doing, what challenges can you identify that you have now, and how do you go about combating them? I know in a workplace environment, say back in your corporate land days, there'd be different triggers, and some of those will be alleviated now that you're working for yourself. But what little trip hazards, as I like to call them, what ADHD traits come up in your self-employed working life?
Things that I'm noticing. Well, definitely the impulsivity and the rapid shifts. Because understanding now that I have an interest-based nervous system, not a importance-based nervous system, knowing that I thrive on challenge and novelty and things like that. I want to reinvent my business every 12 months at least. And my husband actually was like, so that's why you kept changing it up so often. So that the impatience that, well, I've done the thing, I want to see the results immediately. And if I don't, then obviously I've done the wrong thing and I should try something else. So that bouncing from thing to thing to thing. If I'm unconscious, if I haven't got my awareness dialed up, if I'm not physically or mentally, emotionally traveling well, I can be far more impulsive than is good for me, my business, or my clients. So that's a work in progress. I am medicated, which does help, definitely does help my focus without a doubt, but it's still there. Consistency. Believing that there is a certain way that things should be done, because that's what the sage on the stage of business world tells you it should be done this way. So trying to do consistent content creation, for example, thinking that things should take less time than they actually do for me, because I'm not good yet at estimating time. Still not good at that. So starting to realize that you don't have to do it the way everyone says it needs to be done, but I can still fall into that trap of thinking that I should. Whenever I hear the words should in my own head, then I need to pause, take that as a trigger, pause and have a look at that, because I don't. but I have got that narrative running from so many years of being self-employed that perhaps I should do it a certain way. That self-doubt and comparison is still there. Still there. So even though the self-worth wound, so to speak, has been healed, the scar tissue is still there. And so the comparison trap, looking what other people are doing, can take me off course. So we push our noses up against maybe the websites or the emails of people in the business world and assume that all sorts of amazing things are happening. But I've seen the back end of hundreds of businesses now, and I can hand on heart say, it's not always what you think it is. There is truths very well told. So that comparison trap is definitely still an 80. Well, it's a human thing, but it is enhanced because of our for my understanding is that we can be more in that negative headspace if we're not careful. So that definitely happens. And our good old DMN, that default mode network, that leads me to overthinking because I can imagine hundreds of different ways something should be done. So I don't procrastinate, I'm pretty much the opposite, but then I will overthink what it is that I have done and think about how it can be improved. And I'll update my the homepage of my website 22 times in a month and things like that. So those overthinking can happen. And probably the last one is, it's explained to me that we are sprinters in a marathon world. And you cannot sprint a marathon, but I try, which means that I can get burnt out. And I need to be very aware of the ebbs and flow of my energy and make it okay to have a couple of full-on days and then have a break. Right? I need to move to my pattern, not the advised pattern, because it's not going to work for me. So those are the sort of things that I notice. But there's lots of good stuff as well.
I was going to say just that. Flip side. You did mention on your website, you talk about your ADHD superpower or parts of that. Can you talk about the upside, what you know works really well for you, and you can pat yourself on the back because that's something you're proud of? I'd love for you to share your positives too.
Yes, I like to balance the scales. Well, one of the things, and I understand this is about the divergent thinking, which is a part of many of us who have this differently wired brain, the ability to see the big picture, connect the dots, see the opportunities, notice things with a client's business that they can't see. And this ability, which people have said to me, that I can be very big picture and visionary, but I can go right down granular as well. I can, write a headline just as much as I can help them itemize a vision. And that ability to move so quickly between those two places, I love that about my brain. I love the fact that it just delivers ideas off the cuff so quickly. I love the speed with which it goes. It excites me. It energizes me. And so when I am typically in a workshop environment with a client and we're going for 5 or 6 hours with breaks and snacks, but I don't lose any energy. Like, I love the amount of energy and enthusiasm that I have. I love the curiosity that's a part of me, that desire to learn, but then to share. And I love learning what I share. It really helps. So sharing what I learn, it really helps solidify, the lessons. I love the fact that I'm pretty resilient and adaptable. There's been a lot of proverbial hitting the fan in my life in the last 10 years when you've got 4 kids and all sorts of things going on. But I'm very resilient. I can get back up again. And I think that's incredibly useful in business, because so often the thing that you think is going to work will not work. And that doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means that there may be a better way of doing that thing. And so being able to get back up again is a huge part. And empathy. Like I'll say we, I know I'm talking about me, but I believe it's a we have beautiful, profound empathy and the ability to really put ourselves in someone else's shoes and really listen. I know I might interrupt a lot because so much I've got to tell people, but I really hear people and I really see them and feel them. And that to me is so important. To me, a business heart, you need a sense of contribution. So you're doing something meaningful. You need a sense of fulfillment, so you feel fueled and sustained by it. And you need good financial reward for the value that you create. But you can't just do it for the money. It feels
Mm.
empty. Like we have big emotions. And I love the fact that we do because, you're going to love me or you're going to not want to work with me at all. Either way is fine. I believe in polarized to mesmerize, and I'm good with that. So lots and lots of positives. So I like who I am today. I couldn't always say that.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so you should, like you are today. You have a lot of energy, and as you said, with this blue sky thinking and all the other cliches that I can think of. What else can I throw in there? But you know what I mean. It sounds brilliant. So what sort of who would come to you for coaching? Where are they at in their business? Are they starting out? Have they come across a roadblock that they're? What are your clients like?
I think it's a great question because there's different sorts of, like I call myself a coach and a mentor because I don't, a coach, a pure coach really just asks questions. But because of the fact that I've been running businesses for 20 years and I'm actually a co-director and sailing businesses with my husband as well, I've seen a lot. So I'm not afraid to consult, to mentor, to give advice, to let people know what I think, to help them articulate things. So I'm a real mix. So where I work best, where I can add the best value, is someone who has a business. They've had that business for at least 2 or 3 years because I want to see what they've done, because that then allows me to see where the gaps are. And that's where I can really sink my teeth in, rather than someone who's going, I'm thinking of starting a business, wonder what it might be. That to me, I can't add as much value there. So usually it's service-based businesses because I use products, but I don't really market them. I don't know how to make you sell more shampoo. That's just not my thing. It's really purpose fueled businesses. I often say that next chapters are built on skinned knees. So it's often the lessons that we have and have gone through which shorten and sweeten the journey for others, i.e., I ran a marketing agency for a long time. And I shouldn't have run it for that long because it was not fueling me. And I don't want another person to have a business and think that it has to be this way when they could make changes that leverage their natural strengths and skills and interests, and they'll find that they will flourish more. Now, I don't believe in that if you do what you love, you'll never work another day in your life. Nice story. But no, you still have to work, but you don't have to feel trapped by your business. And so people that are open to allowing me in and allowing me to work with their ideas and to, I call it recalibration. It's not reinvention, because often your instincts are good. There's just areas that you can't cover yourself because you're standing on the spot. It's why I have a coach and mentor, because there's shit about me that I can't see the forest for the trees. So that's where I add the most value as someone who has a business but knows that there's more potential sitting in as well as their business. And I want to help pull it out and help them.
That sounds a magical service that you're offering, not only for neurotypicals, but for those with ADHD, women with ADHD, like late diagnosed women with ADHD, also going through the whole thing. And due to your understanding about some of those trip hazards, I can see, as you alluded to before, just creating a strategy, unless it's personalized, not only to the business, but to the business owner. Yes. It's not really going to, it's just going to be a list, isn't it? It's not going to be activated. So all your links and bits and pieces will be in the copy of this podcast. So if anyone wants to go and check out Angela and your services. And so you do you do any one-on-one in the New South Wales area, or is it mainly online? How do you work?
Oh, if you're physically close to me, I love getting started face to face. There's nothing like the energy of being in a room on a table, well, not on the table, but working at the table, the post-it notes and the flip charts and the colored pens and really working through it. There's that real connection from brain to pen. But I've got clients in America and New Zealand, all over Australia. So it can be done on the beauty of Zoom as well. It's Brilliant. There's two bookends to it. There's strategy, because you've got to have strategy, but there's also self-leadership. which is it's important for everybody, but it's especially important for us ADHDers. And self-leadership has components to it. I can very happily give you a wee diagram that you can pop on the page if you like. But the first point is self-knowledge. Okay, so you need to know who you are, what's important to you, what are your strengths, what are your values. Because when we really do the deep dive and get the clarity on that and what you want to, what you believe in and want for your clients, then we can design or redesign, recalibrate that business so that it is leveraging what comes most naturally to you. That makes a business much more sustainable. So that's done. There's prep work. We work in a workshop environment where we pull the business apart and sort of put it back together in a new way. And then mentoring can happen after that to keep that momentum, because there's a thing which I call the kedonk factor. Right. So you can be in this workshop or whatever the case is, at a conference or whatever, and you're so excited and you're so motivated, everything's going to be different. Then you get back to your real life and kedonk. It just feels really hard. Again, it's like, oh, what was I thinking? And that's where the ongoing support it's really important to make sure that, you keep moving forward. So I like
no more kedonking.
No more kedonking. Well, kedonking is sort of inevitable, but we're not going to let you stay down there. We're going to lift it back up again.
Well, it is. That sounds amazing. Angela, it was so lovely to chat to you again. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I'm sure ADH Difference listeners will get a lot out of this podcast. So thank you.
So you're most welcome.
And we will talk again soon.
That would be wonderful. Take care.